There are a lot of games getting remade or remastered lately. I know this has always been a thing, but for some reason it really feels like it's happening quite a lot lately. Remastering and re-releasing games is a double-edged sword to me. There's a lot of good making these games available on modern hardware with crisper visuals, sometimes with even more fully realized worlds to explore. It can be great to finally be able to play a game or series that was either before your time or was just something you missed back when it originally came out. But I think there's also some downsides to remakes and remasters. They can feel like a cop-out, like devs just aren't coming up with new games or stories to tell, or that they're relying too much on your nostalgia to earn the publisher and developer a quick buck by reselling you a game that you've played before. I don't think we're ever going to escape remakes and remasters, but it really does feel like there have been a lot lately. At least for the games I've been following, I've played 4 that have come out in the last month or so, and since they're so clustered together, I figured I would just make a video on all of them. Before I dive into the individual games, I do think it's worthwhile to talk about what I think an ideal remake or remaster is, because I think how you define that determines how you receive some of these remakes and remasters. I am definitely a purist. I really want games to maintain the spirit, the story, and the characters of the original game. Personally, I feel like if you want to change things drastically, it's better to just make a new game for the most part. I do understand that some changes may happen, but personally I prefer as faithful of an experience as possible. And I think it's worth noting that realistic graphics, to me, does not necessarily equate to maintaining that original spirit. Now, while I don't necessarily like that some games change things, like Final Fantasy VII's remake modernizing the combat into a more real-time approach, I still think that those games did a fairly good job at maintaining the spirit of the original. The game's visuals and world felt exactly like you remember it feeling back on that original PS1 game, and while the combat was more real-time, I did enjoy how it still incorporated a lot of the ATB-style gameplay of the original, as well as the materia and the weapons and party structure. The other major thing I personally look for in remakes are quality of life improvements, whether it's streamlined systems, faster combat, just making the game easier or smoother to play by getting rid of some of the unnecessary or rough edges that it might have had. I think the Resident Evil 4 remake is a great example of this. Smoother controls in the combat, letting you move while aiming. While different from the base game, they were still able to maintain the same kind of feel in the combat as the original. For me, the farther you get from that original game, the worse I'm going to receive the remake. For the most part, I would say all 4 of the games that I want to talk about did a fairly good job of staying true to the original game, and in some cases I think they almost did too good of a job, as is the case with Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles. This has been a great game to replay, one of the classic games. Personally, I actually was more familiar with Final Fantasy Tactics Advance growing up. I never had a PlayStation 1, so it's nice to finally get a chance to play the original Tactics game. Love that they added voice acting to the game. It really helps engage with the story, which is one of this game's strong points. However, there were some weird decisions, such as the setting for auto-advancing conversations in cutscenes just always resets to off for some reason, so every time a new conversation starts, you have to re-hit the button. That's annoying. The other thing that really caught me off guard with this remake is the visuals. Square Enix has essentially remade a name for themselves with these HD 2D games. All look so fantastic, and then Final Fantasy Tactics, for some reason, looks like blurry mud. I think the character models in this game look terrible, and I know they were trying to be faithful to the original PS1 game, but honestly, I almost think the original PS1 game, which you can play in this re-release, looks better than the remastered graphics. But I'm playing the remaster because I think it just adds so much to have the voice acting. On top of this, the maps themselves also, it feels almost impossible to navigate. The terrain on them, it always feels like no matter how much I rotate the map to try and get a good angle, I can never see where my character is, where I'm moving him, where I'm trying to attack. It's been very frustrating trying to play the game and has kept me from really diving in fully. I feel like after one or two battles, I kind of get turned off from playing it and have to step away for a bit. Overall, though, it is still a great tactical game with a pretty good story to go with it. I just feel like it isn't living up to some of the standards that Square themselves have set with some of their other recent re-releases of these classic games. While I may have some complaints with Final Fantasy Tactics, I would still say it is an overall positive experience, and I don't regret picking up the game. Unlike the next remaster I want to talk about, which is the remake remaster of the original Space Marine game. Now, luckily I did not buy this game. I played it on Game Pass, but I have to say this might be the worst remaster/remake I think I've ever played in my entire life. Mostly because I feel like it's not a remaster or remake, but is instead just a re-release of the original Xbox 360 game with no updates at all, and they're trying to market it and sell it as a full game. Even with a $40 price point, which is I think what they released it at, this is insulting. I never played the game originally. I remember not hearing the best things from it, but with all the hype of Space Marine 2, I guess the developers are really trying to cash in on people potentially like me who had never played the original, but after hearing such good things about the second one, or maybe even enjoying the second one, wanted to go give that first game a try. But unfortunately, the first game is just bad. It is what many games were back then, a Gears of War clone. But the problem with that is most of the clones of Gears of War are just bad. Clunky controls, poor gameplay, hollow and lifeless by comparison to Gears. It's something I think plagues a lot of games that try and cash in on whatever the new hotness is as far as games go. You can replicate the overall gameplay, but you can't replicate the feel of those games, and I think Space Marine is a prime example of that. Genuinely, I don't see a difference between the original 360 and the remaster. There's like barely some clear textures. It's offensive that they would call this a remaster. Just call it the re-release. Just say, hey, it's the 360 game available on PC now, or whatever. We made it backwards compatible, because really that's all it feels like they did, is they added it to the backwards compatibility. Which is fine if that's all you're going to do, but then don't market it as this like definitive remastered epic edition. Then on the flip side of this, we have Nintendo kind of doing the exact opposite. They just released Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 with really no fanfare. They announced it during the Direct and put it out there with no discussion. What is this? Is it a remaster? Who knows? And of course, they also are selling it for an exorbitant price, which is also frustrating. However, unlike with Space Marine 1, I think the Mario Galaxy games are actually good. So if you want to actually purchase one of these games and play it on modern consoles, this is kind of the only option for you that is legal. Now, I actually never played Mario Galaxy 2, which is funny because Mario Galaxy 1 is actually my favorite of the 3D Mario games. It just never really appealed to me back in the Wii days. I just remembered not really having an urge to pick it up or play it. So now I get to pick it up and play it years later for $70 on my Switch too, but the game looks and plays great. It runs great on the Switch, looks good in 4K, but still overall feels like a downgrade to me from the first Mario Galaxy. It felt like they thought they needed to make Galaxy 1 but harder. So the worlds, it really feels like they've leaned into it being more challenging. But I just never thought that the Galaxy games specifically were the ones to have challenge. That's never what I thought Mario Galaxy 1 was missing. I don't think Mario Galaxy 1 is missing anything. To me, what was so great about the first Mario Galaxy game was the magical wonder of each of the different worlds and planets that they came up with. Running through those levels, exploring them, that was where the joy came from. I never was playing Mario Galaxy 1 and thought, oh, this needs to be harder. And especially when you start considering that much of the game is played on these small planets where you're running around an orb and you think you're running down, but then you hit some axis and now suddenly down is up or left, so Mario just randomly will change directions. It just starts to make the game feel a little clunky and almost frustrating, especially since Galaxy 2 feels like it requires a lot more precision in its movement and in your response to things. It's still a fun game. The addition of Yoshi is nice, but to me it really doesn't stack up to Galaxy. Last but not least, I want to talk about Trails in the Sky First Chapter, which is, of these four, my favorite as far as the remakes go, and to me is the ideal way to remake a game. I think this game looks fantastic. They've made wonderful graphics, the character models look great, and the backgrounds, I think, they did such a good job of making them look modern and good while still maintaining the feel and design of that original PSP game. I have played the game originally on Steam, but never actually finished it because I found the combat to just be way too tedious. Random encounters would take way too long to finish, and while I enjoyed the kind of turn-based tactical combat that the game had, the fact that the battles took so long made me eventually burn out on the game about halfway through. The remake does modernize this a bit with some real-time combat as you're out in the field, but there's still a lot of encounters that require you to go into the turn-based mode, and you can still go into the turn-based mode when you're out on the field. They've done away with the grid structure, but still have maintained the overall move sets of the characters. They're just as I remember them, and they still do kind of mimic that grid base of the original game. Each character can only move so far on their turn on the battlefield, and it's up to you to try and position yourself as best you can to use your area of effect type attacks to hit all the monsters that you're in a combat with. Again, to me, this is the perfect way to maintain the feel of the original while losing a lot of the tedium that it had in that original as well. The voice acting is also fantastic, the music is great, and the overall narrative so far seems like it's been maintained. This is really what I'm looking for when we talk about remakes and remasters. Something that is faithful and honoring to the original, while still modernizing it enough that it does feel like there is some value in playing this version over the original version. What do you think? What's your favorite game remaster? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you playing any of these games? What are your thoughts on them? I would love to hear them. Are there too many remakes? Are there just enough? Should there be more? What game would you like to see remade the most? Leave a comment. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a member. I promise to never re-release old content. And I will see you all with the next video.